Toyota's Prius needed to reinvent itself for this new era. It has. It's now a plug-in hybrid, but a much more sophisticated one, with a smarter look, longer range, and sharper handling. Still want that mid-sized EV? If you're considering that and don't want an SUV, check out one of these as well.
As EV sales falter, hybrid powertrains are elbowing their way back into the sales spotlight. An appropriate time then for the return of the car that started the hybrid revolution, the Toyota Prius. In fifth generation form, it's a very different proposition, and here we're going to tell you why. First launched in 1997 as the car for the 21st century, the Prius went on to find 5.05 million owners over 4 generations, pioneering the Synergy Drive hybrid tech that now underpins just about every Toyota you can now buy, and forcing rival makers to get serious about electrified engines. By the end of the 4th generation model's production run though, hardly any private UK customers were choosing a Prius. In 2021, just 563 models were sold here, mostly to Uber drivers, compared to nearly 18,000 Toyota CHRs. So when this radical new 5th generation Prius model was launched at the 2022 LA Motor Show, the Japanese manufacturer announced that it wouldn't be appearing in UK showrooms. But then came the hiccup in the EV market and a renewal of customer interest in the kind of plug-in hybrid powertrain that Toyota only offers in the priciest versions of its CHR and RAV4 SUVs. Suddenly, that decision to can Prius sales was starting to look somewhat premature, hence the brand's U-turn on the subject in early 2024 and the decision to sell this Mark V design here after all, though only for the moment in PHEV form. So to find out more about it, you're going to need the industry's most comprehensive review, the Car and Driving Road Test. There's much that feels familiar about this rejuvenated Prius, which in a way is surprising because almost everything is different. Earlier generation versions of this design built this model line's eco reputation on self-charging full hybrid powertrains. Toyota's also offered plug-in hybrid versions in the past, since 2012, but very few people ever bought them. Well, that's going to have to change because, to start with anyway, this 5th generation Prius is now exclusively a plug-in hybrid. For the time being, the 2-litre self-charging hybrid unit offered with the car outside Europe isn't available here, though as we've already seen with this model line, decisions like that can change very quickly with market conditions. Use of a PHEV drivetrain has pushed up the price of this car, of course, but it's the drive format you'd ideally pick with this one if you could afford it. To make access to the model range easier, other countries offer an entry-level 191 bhp Prius PHEV, but from launch and at the time of this test, the UK was only being offered the full-fat 220 bhp version we're trying here. That figure, which is an eye-catching 99 bhp more than the previous generation Prius plug-in, is generated by a combination of a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine and front-mounted twin electric motors energised by a 13.6 kilowatt-hour battery. Performance is far more rapid than anything a Prius driver will have experienced before. 62 miles an hour, dispatched in 6.8 seconds en route to 110 miles an hour. In other markets, Toyota offers a tuned-up 24-hour Le Mans Centennial GR Edition sporty version. No, we don't really see the point of that either. But there are sport, normal and eco drive modes, plus a custom setting. But no paddle shifters for brake regeneration. Just Toyota's usual extra B gear shift option that'll maximise regenerative braking and extend your EV range. On top of that, there are buttons between the seats that force the car into either its hybrid or full electric powertrain settings. Handling should also be a pleasant surprise for long-term fans of this model line. To that end, Toyota has widened the track and based this Mark V Prius on an evolved version of its well-regarded TNGA platform. The result is a car that's stiffer, more refined and more stable than before. Traction's aided by the 235/50 R 18-inch tyres that ride on larger aerodynamic wheels. Indulge this 5th generation model's newfound agility and you'll probably make a sizable dent in the available EV range, now rated at between 44 and 53 miles, depending on the version you choose. That top figure is about 8 miles less than you get from a rival PHEV Golf, but it's about 10 miles more than was returned by the previous generation model. At the wheel of one of these, there's a slightly confusing juxtaposition of virtues. The slightly lethargic responses of the Whirry hybrid engine and eCVT auto gearbox constantly remind you of this Toyota's Eco remit, but the small steering wheel and relatively crisp handling responses suggest something of a sporty vibe too, which you'd probably buy into were it not for the predictably anaesthetised steering feel. Ride isn't exemplary, especially on this top version's big 19-inch wheels, but cruising refinement is, helped by a noise reduction layer inserted into the windscreen and front windows. Only at lower speeds, when the engine fires up, is your journeying silence in any way really intruded upon. It doesn't fall apart through the corners either, thanks to a low centre of gravity and a weight that at 1,545 kilos is relatively light by PHEV standards. The result is a Prius that, in comparison to its predecessors, feels more like a car and less like some kind of eco appliance. Helping with this transition is an instrument cluster that thankfully is no longer awkwardly sited in a narrow slot in the centre of the top of the dash. Instead, you get a properly deep and informative cluster screen right in your eye line. It's the sort of thing we think other brands should copy, sitting at the base of the windscreen where a head-up display might otherwise be, but serving the driver rather better. As you can see, this Mark V model is a very different kind of Prius. Yes, the familiar wedge shape remains, but it's far more sleekly fashioned in this form, with the roof height lowered by 50mm. The overall length at 4,599mm is cut back by 46 over the previous generation model, and the rakish profile is set off by the big 17, or as in this case, 19-inch wheels that sit in black plastic-clad arches. It's difficult to see where the LED headlights are here at the front, where the screen has what seems like an almost impossibly steep rake. A light bar runs the whole width of the nose section, emphasising a width increase over the previous generation model of 22mm. And inside this silver-framed lower air intake, grille shutters control the inflow of cooling air. The rear also has a steeply raked screen and a hatch with spaced-out Prius lettering. The tailgate's accentuated by a three-dimensional full-width linear lighting element focusing attention on the Prius logo. And there are slim lower reflectors. What's more important, of course, though, is what you can't see, a structure underpinned by the second iteration of the TNGA, or Toyota New Global Architecture platform this Prius shares with the CHR. You might not be quite as taken with the cabin. The visual flair here doesn't quite match that of the exterior, but there's lots of design ingenuity to admire. The brand has tried to deliver a big step forward in perceived quality, hence this hatched mid-level trimming panel, blue strips of ambient lighting, soft-touch door armrests, and piano black inlays around the centre console. But nothing around you feels particularly premium in the way you'd hope a car of this price might. There are two design trademarks here, the way the raked back windscreen flows away into the distance ahead of you, flanked by big quarter-light windows, which in turn makes space for the unusual high-mounted positioning of this driver's combi meter, a little instrument screen positioned almost where a head-up display might be, so close is it to the windshield glass. You've to view this monitor over the top of the wheel rather than conventionally through it, hence this stitched tiller's correspondingly small and sporty size. That's the kind of thing a long-time Prius fan would like, and such a customer will feel right at home here, with the angular dash and high centre console with its stubby rubber-topped gear selector. Toyota designers don't appear to concur with the current trend of reducing dashboard button clutter. There's lots of physical switchgear here, rather too much on the steering wheel actually, and some of it's rather hidden, like this bank of switches by your right knee. Still, we'll take that if, as is the case here, it means that climate functions don't have to be relegated to fiddly touchscreen functions. Proper buttons here mean that you can alter cabin ventilation while keeping your eyes firmly on the road. One of the things that Toyota has most improved in recent years has been its infotainment tech, and that progression continues here with a decently sized 12.3-inch Smart Connect Plus centre touchscreen with built-in cloud-based navigation, Wi-Fi, and a web browser. In contrast to the dated monitor of the previous model, it comes with smart graphics, proper voice control, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and over-the-air updates. Though it ignores the current trend for customisable home screen widget panels. In fact, there's no home screen at all, just a bank of shortcut functions along the monitor's right-hand frame for navigation, media, phone, car and feature settings. Anything else you might want to know can be found on the high-set combi meter instrument screen I just mentioned. Here, what looks like a central dial is actually made up of a left-hand battery indicator, a right-hand fuel gauge and an upper power meter with a speed readout in the centre. A top left steering wheel button moves this central dial format from the middle to the right of the screen, making space on the left for various selectable functions. Those for eco-driving, a compass, an adaptive cruise mode, audio and trip data readouts, and an energy flow monitor. What else? Well, the seats are decently supportive with powered lumbar adjustment, and both come cooled, power adjusted and heated in this top spec model. Thanks to the raked back styling, rearward vision isn't the best, but there's a reversing camera and parking sensors to help with that, along with, on this top spec version, one of those digital rear view mirrors. Storage space is a mixed bag. The door bins are tiny and there's nowhere for your sunglasses, but the glove box is reasonably sized and most of your stuff will go in this big bin at the base of the centre stack, which has USB-A and USB-C ports nearby, plus a 12-volt socket. And here's a touch we like, a hidden compartment that literally says #hidden compartment. Nice. There are cup holders ahead of the gear stick. You get a lidded box between the seats with twin USB-C ports and ticket clips in the sun visor vanity mirrors. Getting out the front, you'll notice that the door slam is unfortunately one of those that leave you wondering whether the door is actually fully shut or not. Hey, despite the shorter overall front to rear dimension, a 50mm increase in length between the axles promises more space at the rear, access via doors with hidden catches recessed into the C-pillars. Inside, though, you'll still struggle to comfortably accommodate more than a couple of adults. Toyota has moved the roof peak rearwards to preserve headroom, but there still isn't that much of it, which might rather put off the minicab drivers who were the biggest market for the previous generation Prius models. The central transmission tunnel isn't particularly high, but a centrally seated adult still wouldn't be particularly comfortable. The PHEV system's 13.6 kilowatt-hour battery sits under this bench, which is why it doesn't slide. And because that battery is 50% denser than the one used in the previous Prius and uses fewer cells, it's smaller, though there doesn't seem to be any discernible benefit to that back here. The bench still doesn't slide, and like the floor, it's still positioned a little higher than you'd ideally like for long journeying comfort. Overhead reading lights, twin USB-C ports and an armrest with cup holders are all provided, but the seatbacks don't recline, There are no door bins, only a bottle holder in each door, and you don't get a seat back pocket on the driver's side, which seems a little mean. Out back, you only get this powered tailgate with top spec trim. It raises to reveal a flimsy tonneau cover and a high set and shallow boot area offering a mere 284 litres of space, though to be fair, that's 11 litres more than you'd get in a Volkswagen Golf PHEV, but a massive 206 litres less than a rival Skoda Octavia IV. There's no real room under the floor, just a compartmentalised area for the warning triangle and the tyre repair kit, which is a little vexing because under the floor is where you'd ideally want to store the PHEV charging leads. But because they don't fit there, as you can see, they have to take up boot space and slide around the cargo area. There's a deep recess to the left, a light on the right, and 4 tie-down points. And here's a nice touch, a useful 3-pin socket on the left. Unfortunately though, Toyota's omitted bag hooks, and there's neither a ski hatch or a convenient 40-20-40 rear backrest split, which means that if the rear is full of passengers and you've long items to take, that lengthy baggage will have to go on the roof. Toyota doesn't quote a capacity figure with everything folded flat. Prices for this PHEV only, 220 bhp, 5th generation model, start from just over £37,000, which gets you base design trim. You'll need around £40,000 for this plusher XL version. In terms of alternatives, well, there's nothing quite like a Prius. Toyota has clearly priced the design version against the segment sales leader, Volkswagen's Golf GTE, and this XL model against that VW's identically engineered close cousin, the Audi A3 Sportback 40 TFSI-E. Much the same VW Group PHEV drivetrain that features in those cars is also used by Skoda's Superb IV and the Volkswagen Passat e-hybrid estate for much the same kind of budget. But a potential Prius customer would probably be attracted by something a little more stylised, like a similarly priced Mercedes CLA 250E, or maybe a DS9 E-Tense. Or perhaps, if you want something a little left field and with more power, a Renault Rafale E-Tech 4x4. And of course, your choice would widen further if you were prepared to consider an SUV, but Toyota covers that market with its RAV4 PHEV. If, having considered all those other options, you conclude that there's nothing quite like this 5th generation Prius, then you're going to need to know just how generous Toyota has been with standard spec. So let's take a look at that now. Key equipment features on the design model include 17-inch alloy wheels, LED headlamps, smart keyless entry, rear privacy glass and alarm, and a heat pump to preserve EV driving range in cold weather. Inside, there's a fully digital 7-inch driver's combi meter, parking sensors with obstacle, vehicle and pedestrian detection, a reversing camera and dual-zone air conditioning with a Nano X air quality system. MediaTek's taken care of by the Toyota Smart Connect Plus multimedia systems, 12.3-inch central touchscreen, which has both cloud-based and embedded navigation, voice recognition, a 6-speaker DAB audio system, and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. This plusher XL version rides on 19-inch wheels and comes with 8-way power-adjustable front seats with memory settings and integrated heating and ventilation. Synthetic leather upholstery, a digital rear-view mirror and a powered tailgate are also included in the specification. As you'd expect, the latest generation Toyota Safety Sense, active safety and driver assistance systems are also provided across the Prius range as standard. These include the latest evolution of the autonomous braking pre-collision system, which detects pedestrians, cyclists and motorcyclists and has oncoming vehicle detection and intersection turn assist. There's also Toyota's proactive driving assist setup, which helps with obstacle avoidance and distance control, plus it automatically gently brakes the car on a navigated route if you enter a curve too fast. And that's just the start. Emergency steering assist aids you with panic swerves, An emergency driving stop system brings the car to a controlled halt if the driver is taken ill at the wheel. And lane trace assist helps keep the vehicle in its intended path. These safety systems work with a standard full-range adaptive cruise control system, which also includes an added overtake prevention support feature, which automatically prevents unintentional undertaking on multi-lane highways. Turn signal linked control helps the driver join the traffic flow at a safe speed and distance from other vehicles. And there's a blind spot monitor which alerts you to vehicles in your blind spot, linking to a safe exit assist feature which warns if vehicles or cyclists are approaching from the rear when opening a door. Rear cross traffic alert warns you of oncoming traffic hazards when you're reversing, while front cross traffic alert does the same thing when you're edging out of a space or a junction. And there's also lane change assist, automatic high beam, lane departure alert, and road sign assist with a speed limiter. There's also a driver monitoring camera, a rear seat reminder system, and the usual complement of airbags, including a central airbag and driver's knee bag, all linked to the usual e-call system. Say what you like about the Prius, but in the last quarter of a century, this model line's certainly done its bit for the ozone layer. Toyota claims that over this period, 4 generations of Prius have prevented more than 82 million tonnes of CO2 from entering the atmosphere. Building on that, this 5th generation model is the cleanest yet, with a CO2 figure of just 12 grams per kilometre. As with all PHEVs, a completely unrealistic 3-figure combined cycle fuel return is quoted, in this case up to 565 mpg. But you should easily be able to achieve the kind of regular fuel consumption you'd previously have got from a frugal diesel. These stats, of course, assume that you're maximising possible EV driving range from the car's 13.6 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, which, as I just told you in our driving section, is supposed to be able to take you up to 53 miles between charges. That figure, by the way, is based on the entry-level design variant with 17-inch wheels. For this XL version, with its 19-inch rims, the range falls by quite a lot to 44 miles. That claimed range figure puts the car in a very favourable 8% benefiting kind taxation bracket, which for many customers would be the clincher for purchase. On the move, you can select an EV mode or use a hybrid setting that will work with the sat-nav and uses geofencing technology that will prioritise electric power in low emission zones. The navigation system can also suggest a route that will take into account your state of charge and identify possible charging spots. In this Prius, you can also adjust the strength of the regenerative braking using the gear shifter's provided B setting. And there's the usual frugally focused eco drive mode if you're prepared to put up with the reductions in engine power and climate system output that come with it. Talking of frugality driver tools, the Prius model line has long specialised in these, and there are plenty once more fitted here. The instrument screen has a Charge Eco Power readout at the top, and a selectable Eco section has an EV driving ratio display, so you can see how much of your journeying has been conducted on battery power. Or you can view a meter which gives your consumption in miles per kilowatt hour, and another that scores the frugality of your driving across 3 eco-zone criteria: start, cruise and stop. The dashboard's central infotainment monitor has a selectable car section with an energy flow meter and the usual Toyota trip info section divided into graphical current and history consumption displays. There's also a charging schedule screen. And talking of charging, well, that's a bit of a disappointment. There's no fast CCS DC charging like you'd get on the latest rival Volkswagen Group PHEVs. And the slow 3.3 kilowatt maximum charge rate requires 4 hours to completely replenish the car from empty. Given the much improved 13.6 kilowatt hour battery fitted to this Mark V model, now 50% denser with fewer cells, we'd expected better. Still, there's better news when it comes to ownership peace of mind. As usual with Toyotas these days, if you keep the car serviced at a franchise dealer, the warranty can be extended up to a maximum of 10 years. This radical reinvention of what a Prius should be was developed as part of what Toyota calls its hybrid reborn concept, based around what the brand thinks the car will need to remain popular for the next 25 years. And the result of all this effort is indeed very different from earlier, much frumpier designs in this long-running model line. We're disappointed this Mark V version can't be had with the self-charging hybrid powertrain that Toyota promotes so heavily with its other cars. But if you can afford it, the plug-in hybrid drivetrain we're restricted to instead might be a tempting alternative to that mid-sized EV you might have been considering. No longer need a Prius driver be dismissed as a slightly nerdy eco-warrior or an Uber driver. This rejuvenated design is sharp to look at, sharp to drive, and a really rather clever alternative to a compact PHEV crossover. We're reminded of the original advertising tagline for the first generation version of this model. You look smart, you should drive a Prius. Maybe it still applies.